Today is January 6th, and it is, according to Christian belief, a holiday called the Epiphany. And I bring it up not because this is a program that focuses particularly on Christian tradition or theology, but because the idea of the Epiphany really sort of resonated with what I try to do on the show, and what the beginning of our new year tends to be about anyway. Now, if you don't know about this Christian tradition, but you've heard the word Epiphany before, you've probably heard it in relation to an awakening. I had an epiphany. I saw something revealed to me. I learned something new, and it's something that brings new knowledge. It's something that brings new awareness, and that's in everyday, usage. That's generally how that word is used. Epiphany itself means the materialization of something, usually something divine, appears or manifests itself. So Merriam-Webster defines it as an appearance or manifestation, especially of a divine being. Also, a usually sudden manifestation or perception of the essential nature or meaning of something. Like I had an epiphany about our social environment, or something along those lines. Another definition: an intuitive grasp of reality through something, such as an event, usually simple and striking. I had an epiphany while reading this book, and it really made me understand something or someone. And an illuminating discovery, realization, or disclosure. But in the context of Christianity, Epiphany is a church festival that commemorates the coming of the Magi, or as you might be more familiar with, the three kings that came to visit the baby Jesus, because they knew that he was the Christ child, and they followed a star to find him. So this is a day, January 6th, that is celebrated as the dawning of awareness of the spiritual nature of the God within. Within the baby Jesus, but it also is interpreted as a realization of the God within us, the potential that we have within. Now, we talked before our last show about the story of the three magi. In Eastern Christian tradition, there's 12 of them, but in Western Christian tradition, it's narrowed down to 3. So what are the magi? Well, magi is a plural term for magus. And a magus is a wise man, but he's a wise man that has magical ability, who knows the wisdom and the secret traditions that are often associated with magic. the Magi, the three Magi that are talked about in relation to the Christ story, are thought to be priests. They're priests of a particular religion or a spiritual practice, which was the worship of God, a sun god, in Persia by the name of Mithra. The Mithraic mystery traditions were quite the thing back in ancient Persia, and even continued on into Roman practice, although the Roman practice of it apparently changed quite a bit. They had a different understanding of what Mithraism was supposed to be. But these Magi that came to see Jesus were priests of this kind of religion. And there, of course, the story pinpoints them as coming from the East, and that's where this Mithraism was flourishing at the time. To my mind, it is a connection. The three Magi coming to visit the Jesus baby is a honoring and understanding that this is another sun god, if you will. Sun gods always are connected to the most powerful divine presence in the world. There are sun god traditions in just every culture because every culture deals with the sun. And the sun is the most powerful energy on the planet because the sun is directly responsible for your ability to raise crops, to eat, and so on and so forth. So there have always been sun gods. Mithra, very powerful one. Sun gods, the mythology around sun gods always deals with death and rebirth. They're born, they are powerful, they're connected to the sun, then they die, and they're reborn. It follows the cycle just like nature. And as we talked about before, the Magi practiced certain esoteric beliefs that one might consider magical, or just some people might even consider them paganish. But one of the things they practiced was astrology. So when they talk about how the three wise men came to find Jesus, they are talking about astrology. They're talking about their understanding of astrology. They used astrology to see that something very special was about to happen in this corner of the world. And so off they went. So this is Epiphany Day. And it is celebrated as the revelation of God within. And so, beyond the traditional celebrations of it, which I won't get into here, but we can think of it as a day of understanding our divine nature, our divine mind. And as we start the new year, we are always filled with potential. And that's really what this is, the potential that we have within to become whatever we want to be. So that's something important to hold on to. And it's important to hold on to, particularly as I start now telling you about some of the predictions that are going to occur here in 2019 and onward. Many people want to know what's going to happen in politics. But the first thing, of course, is, there have been some predictions about what's going to happen in Congress and what's going to happen with our president. But none of that gets started until we actually um, find a solution to our current problem, which is the government shutdown. You may know there's a standoff in our government over the desire of the president to have a few $1 billion to build a wall around our country, and those who don't think that's such a good idea. And as a result, no bill has been passed to fund the government, and so the government has been shut down. This has very real effects on many people that I know of living here in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I know many people who are being furloughed or out of work. There are people who can't get certain government programs done or taken care of, like student loans and subsidies on mortgages and things of that nature are just tanking because of this. So really nothing happens until that gets resolved. And I think that it will shortly, but I also think that it will be one of the longer, if not longest, of the shutdowns that we've had. And it always amazes me because, the first time I ever heard of a government shutdown was, I think the first time it happened was in the 90s, under the Clinton administration, and I remember that. And I remember being astounded. I had no idea. And maybe many people didn't. I don't think many people did at that time. I had no idea that the government itself could shut down, or that people who were supposed to be running the government would shut it down. Because that had never been heard of before. As far as I know, I don't remember. I'm not all that old, but I don't remember there being a government shutdown ever previous to that time. And it's amazing that we came to a point where our leaders, certain of our leaders, felt the government wasn't important enough to keep running unless they got their way on some issue. And I think that shows the lack of, I won't even say moral integrity, just the lack of maturity among our leaders that has been, for past 30 or so years. I mean, I remember being a kid, and even when the whole Watergate Nixon thing was happening and he was resigning and all of that, there was always, to me, and maybe that's just coming from the perspective of being a kid at the time, but there was always the sense that there were, mature minds, brilliant minds at work, and that's why they were there, and they would figure it out, and, they would, take care of our government and our country and, by extension, ourselves. And what happened after Watergate, slowly but surely, and they talk about this all the time, the trust, I guess, in government began to erode to the point where people are electing politicians to storm the government, if you will, to tear it down because it does things that they don't like. It's really amazing to me. So